Leo, a member of the Bell County League of Women Voters. Please take this moment to silence your cell phones. The League and the Big 106.3 are co-sponsoring this forum. I want to thank Mr. O'Brien for his continued support of the League and the citizens of this county by diligently keeping us informed through his website, radio show, and Facebook page. I welcome all those watching this forum on their electronic devices. We are pleased to have the Middlesboro candidates for mayor, Mr. Clarence Bo Green and Mr. Rick Nelson, here with us. We thank the candidates for taking time from their busy campaign schedule to appear tonight. This forum is designed to impart information to you, the voter, in accordance with the League's belief that a democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens. The format for this forum, which has been accepted by the candidates, is opening statements by each candidate with a 3-minute time limit. Responses to questions have a 3-minute limit, and the opposing candidate will have a 1 minute for rebuttal. Questions tonight were drawn from the community and the League of Women Voters. Please raise your hand if you would like an index card to write out a question. A League member will bring you a card, and the question will be screened by a committee for use later in the forum. The timekeeper appointed for this evening is Sally Smith. She will indicate when there is 30 seconds remaining, then 15 seconds, and then the answer will have to be finished. Our forum will conclude with a closing statement of 3 minutes by each candidate, and this will be in reverse order of the opening statement. There will be an opportunity after the forum for the audience to address any questions that you may have with the candidates themselves. I will now read an abbreviated job description of the mayor in a mayor-council form of government. This is from the Kentucky Revised Statutes, Title IX, Chapter 83A. The executive authority of the city shall be vested in and exercised by the mayor. The mayor shall enforce the mayor-council plan, city ordinances and orders, and all applicable statutes. He shall supervise all departments of city government and the conduct of all city officers and employees under his jurisdiction, and shall require each department to make reports to him, required by ordinance or as he deems desirable. The mayor shall report to the council and to the public on the condition and needs of city government as he finds appropriate or as required by ordinance, but not less than annually. He shall make any recommendations for actions by the council he finds in the public interest. The mayor shall preside at meetings of the council. Any delegation of the mayor's power, duties, or responsibilities to subordinate officers and employees, and any expression of his official authority to fulfill executive functions shall be made by executive order. The mayor shall be the appointing authority with power to appoint and remove all city employees, including police officers, except as tenure and terms of employment are protected by statute, ordinance, or contract, and except for employees of the council. The salary for the Middlesboro mayor is $19,500. We will now have the opening statement by Mr. Nelson.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to be here. I want to thank the League of Women Voters. My first debate was 1998 when I ran for state representative, and we did that, if I'm not mistaken, out at the Fine Arts Building in Middlesboro. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing critical times in our city, and I want to offer my services to try to get us out of the funk that we've been in for several years. I want to tell you a little bit about me because I think you can relate. I come from a working family. My dad worked in the coal mines for 30 years. My mom worked 20 years as a grocery clerk to make ends meet. And Bill, she made the great sum of $3 for a 10-hour day. But you know, back then you had to do what you had to do, and that's why I think I get a little bit of my work ethic from them. Campaigning, I started early. April the 10th I started, and right now I can honestly say I've walked 80% of Middlesboro, going door to door to door. I don't know if anybody else has done that, and that's old-fashioned, but I think that that's the best way to do it, to meet the people. Now, I taught school for 30 years. My wife taught for 30 years. We've been married for 42 years, and we've lived in Middlesboro for 42. We have one daughter, Katie, and we've got a grandson that's 2 years old, and they named him for some reason Willie Nelson Landon. So I don't know what that's going to do to him down the road, but that's his name, Willie Nelson. So we'll hope that for the best for him. I'm going to tell you the number one issue that we've got. Some of you may think that it is the dilapidated buildings, and that's number two. You're close. Suboxone clinics are close, Homeland's close, an array of other things are close. A gentleman I talked to the other day said that the brush over the stop signs were his biggest issue because he ran a stop sign and almost had a wreck. But, you know, you get different opinions from different folks. But the number one concern is the budget. Without the budget, we can do nothing. And I'm going to list some things here that if you are a concerned citizen, your jaw is going to drop and say, I can't believe that. The question is, who has been watching the city's checkbook? And the answer is apparently no one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. We'll now hear Mr. Green's opening statement.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you to the Bell County League of Women's Voters for hosting this event, and also to Brian O'Brien for also hosting it and putting it out there, and Ryan Cloud as well. I also want to thank all the members in the audience and everybody watching at home. As you can tell, that there's a lot of interest in this election, and I think I feel the same as you do, that it's a very important election to our city. I believe our city's at a crossroads, and if we don't take action now, then we risk falling even farther behind in our neighboring cities and up the road in I-75 in Corbin and down in Tennessee. I want to introduce myself. I know most of the people in the audience, but my name is Bo Green. I was born and raised in Middlesboro, lived here my whole life. I went away, graduated from Middlesboro High School in 1996, went away to UK, graduated, and was lucky enough to come back home to work in a third-generation family business started by my papa, Clarence Bo Green. I moved home and worked alongside my parents, Bob and Carol. I've enjoyed that. It's been a very good experience for me. I was lucky to do it with your parents and have your family close by. I'm recently married to Laura Green, and she moved here from Barberville. And I wanted to say I appreciate her support, and I have 3 sisters, and my whole family, nieces and nephews, all their support as well. My campaign is pretty simple. We focus on 4 points. We want to run the city like a business, and with my business background and education, I believe I'm the person for the job. I see my opponent said the number one concern is a budget. Well, I'm here to tell you from a business background, a budget's just a piece of paper. It doesn't matter what that piece of paper says. It's the business acumen to put that budget in place and not to spend more than what you're gaining. And so that's the most important part. A budget's just a target. It doesn't matter if you're not bringing in revenues, you can't spend it. And with my business background, I know how that works. The second thing on my campaign is I will be a full-time mayor. I'll be available to all the citizens. I'll serve them fairly and equally. Number 3, we want to clean up the town. That includes streets, curbs, sidewalks, the dilapidated buildings, properties, clean up our drug problem, and there's ways we can do that. And number 4, I want to bring back jobs to our economy and our local town. I want you all to know since the year 2000, we've lost 1,300 jobs in Bell County alone. And I, for one, am not okay with that. I've been on council for 8 years, and I don't feel like I've made the impact that I want to make. And that's what led me to the decision to run for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin the questions with Mr. Green. Pineville has made great progress in revitalizing their downtown. This is credited to a commitment on the part of the mayor and the city council and the incentive package they developed along with the coordination of their Main Street director. What are your ideas for supporting the revitalization of downtown Middlesboro?
I think that's a very important question, and I think by my actions in the past that I have shown my commitment to downtown Middlesboro. I've been active in the city since I moved back, and I think it's a great thing what Middlesboro Main Street is doing. I think the concert series is a great idea. It's brought a lot of people back into town. It's major people. It brings a lot of business people out and brings back a community feel to our town, which is what we're lacking. The Wing Fling is another example. It brings a lot of people out. It's one of the best events that we have, and it's important to continue to support those. The Fall Festival being back downtown is a very important deal as well. The Elks Lodge, trying to put that back into use is a very important thing. That's a big task for everybody. As everybody knows, we're gonna have to get some grants or something to get that going. But we also need to work with property owners in the downtown, a lot of vacant buildings. We need to come up with some kind of city ordinance. Maybe we can do tax incentives to work with them to improve the downtown properties. Paint the Town grants are available. These empty storefronts, we need to maybe work with them to put some storefronts in there, like in Christmas, like the art students do from the high school. There's also so much more that we can do. Recently, the city council approved putting in for a grant for downtown for bike lanes out to 25E and Cumberland Avenue. And we made sure as the council that the city would oversee that money if we got it, and we could do signage and an entryway into the town. And downtown's vital to our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, I'll repeat the question. What are your ideas for supporting the revitalization of downtown Middlesboro?
Well, you mentioned Pineville, and Pineville has done a tremendous job under the leadership of Mayor Scott Baden. And here's some of the things that Pineville has done and Middlesboro may want to consider. Pineville offers, in some cases when they are remodeling their businesses, free water for so long, free sewage, dumpsters. They pay the dump fee for that. One of the things that Pineville has done that I think would help us, they have frozen the assessments on property if that property is being remodeled. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you had a business downtown Middlesboro that was valued at $100,000. For 5 years, the assessment on that property from the city or from Pineville City and hopefully Middlesboro City is going to be on $100,000. Now, if they improve that business and all of a sudden it's worth $500,000, they're still only going to pay the assessment on $100,000 for 5 years. And you know, that's a pretty good incentive, I believe, for a person that wants to put some money into the storefronts down here. Now, a couple of other things we need to mention. Pineville has been very fortunate because they've had 2 or 3 folks that have borrowed a ton of money. I mean a ton of money. And they have invested in Pineville in retail stores, in restaurants, and apartments. They've got 9 brand new apartments down there. But it came as the result of 2 or 3 people putting their financial future on the line, because when you borrow $500,000, $1 million, and you don't know if you're gonna get a return on it, that's taking a gamble. We've got that in Middlesboro. We've got some folks that are stepping to the plate and remodeling some of our buildings. Now, if I'm elected mayor, what I plan on doing is meeting with every store owner in Middlesboro. I will have tourism with me. I will have Chamber of Commerce with me. I will have someone from the state with me, and I'll sit down and I'll say, look, we want to help you. Are you interested in improving your building? If the answer is yes, we're going to give them all the resources that we can to improve that building. But they may not want to. They may not want to improve that building. At the very least, we have to have minimum standards for our storefronts. If you're not going to improve the building, you're going to make sure it's clean. You're going to have curtains or shades in the front so that you don't see the junk in the back of the building. I think that's important for the mayor to have a one-on-one issue or a one-on-one meeting with each business owner. It makes them feel important, and maybe you can encourage them to do something that needs to be done. But we've got to keep our town clean, or no one else is going to come here.
Thank you. Mr. Green, any rebuttal?
Yes, I agree that we need to continue that. And Pineville's made great strides, but there are certain reasons Middlesboro's lag behind Pineville. And one of those is our building owners, property owners. Some of them are absent, don't care. And so it's just as important to come up with ideas to meet with them, but you also have to go through with the enforcement on the ordinance. We have the ordinance in place. I've read them all as a council member. It's just important to have a mayor that will enforce these and make their city employees enforce them as well. And also, we need some grant opportunities, which is why I support a full-time grant writer to write grants for the city and downtown improvement. Thank you.
Next question is for Mr. Nelson. What are your plans for bringing the city audits up to date and to ensure they occur annually?
Well, this is one of the most amazing facts in Middlesboro history. I'm sure if Ann Matheny wrote another chapter of her book, it would be on audits because they're very, very important. Let me tell you why they're important. We've not had an audit, I don't think, in the last 8 years until recently the audit started. And we're up to 2015, we're 4 years behind. Let me give you a story why an audit's important. I don't know if you knew this, but in 2014, as state representative, we were able to get $7.5 million for the new addition out of Southeast Community College. It's going well, Green Construction has it, and it looks good. Now, to pull that $7.5 million down, the local community had to kick in some money. And the city of Middlesboro committed $500,000 to that project. But guess what? They don't have the money to pay that $500,000. The college had to redo some resources to put it in the pot to keep from losing that $7.5 million. I called the League of Cities. The city of Middlesboro applied for a $750,000 grant, $500,000 for the college, $250,000 to work on the sewer plant. But they did not follow through with that. And you know what the guys at the League of Cities told me? They said it's a good thing that they didn't follow through, because without a current audit, we would have had to turn them down. Now that's pretty serious when you can't get money to fix your sewer plant. So who's been watching the checkbook all this time? That's the question that's out there. Thank you.
Mr. Green, I'll repeat the question. What are your plans for bringing the city audits up to date and to ensure they occur annually?
As a city council member, I have worked very hard to get our city audits up to date. I personally have called the state auditor's office and been told that we could have a special inspection. They said that that would take a long, long time, and they don't advise that. They said that the only way to get the mayor to act on this was to have public pressure, which I called the newspaper. I had them come to meetings and started pressuring our current mayor. I personally wrote an RFP, which is a request for proposals for audit services. I wrote a classified ad for the Daily News. I actually called the Daily News and found out how much it cost to advertise for the RFP in the city paper. They told me it was $62. I presented it to the council. The council voted 9-0 to advertise for auditors. That mayor never put it in. I called the city attorney. I said, as a council member, what can I do to ensure our audits are complete? I will take out the ad for myself and pay for it myself. I was told as a council member, I do not have the authority to spend the money to take out that ad. Therefore, the council, hands are tied on that, because we can't spend the money, we can't sign the checks. How many auditors are gonna come and sign a contract when they can't guarantee they're gonna get paid by the mayor? The mayor signs the checkbook. So we continually fought it. You can ask any council member. These facts are accurate. We fought this and fought this. Finally, the mayor filed an executive emergency order and hired an auditor that he chose. I've researched that as well. There's nothing the council can do when he files an emergency order. I researched it and tried to fight it, and at that point, I decided I was going to run for mayor. So therefore, I thought I'd fight him from the campaign trail, and that's what I did. So to sum it up, city audits are very important. It's state statute. I know this. There's no punishment. As a city, you don't get any money withheld. You do get told if you apply for a grant that you can't have one unless you have audits up to date, and that's why the current mayor finally decided to do them. We have fought this and fought this and fought this, and I've led that charge, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to say that I will do an audit every year, and I will work with the council to advertise in the paper and get a minimum of 3 proposals, like the state guidelines say, and get the audits up to date. We have worked very hard. We've been assured by the city auditor that they will have them up to date before the new election, because I wanted, no matter who wins this election, they should have a clean slate starting January 1. Thank you.
Any rebuttal, Mr. Nelson? No. The next question is for Mr. Green. If elected, do you envision any special programs for 2 groups of your citizenry, senior citizens and youth?
I feel senior citizens are sometimes forgotten in our community, and I think that's a shame, because that is a very important part of our community and one that is overlooked a little bit. We have a senior citizen center. It needs to be improved. It needs a little bit of manpower and some improvements and all that, more activities out there. Another thing I'd like to look at as the mayor is to try to find somebody that might want to invest in an assisted living center here. I think there's a huge opportunity for that, to bring that in with activities for seniors as well. We have a couple of great nursing homes that are very important, but we've got to get that as well. As far as youth goes, I think that's vital to our future. As far as, like I've mentioned before, we need a grant writer. With a grant writer, we can increase our city parks, improve them, get them equipment. I was talking to a mother at the Fall Festival. She suggested fencing in some areas of a playground so they wouldn't have to worry about their kids. That's a great idea. Right now, the city's limited in funds, but if we had a grant writer, we could get grants to improve the city. I'd like to expand Lincoln Park. I think it's, with its softball field, we could work with the school system out at East End to make that into a citywide park. I think the South Side Park needs more attention, and the Fords Woods Park needs people to patrol it. I've heard recently that there's people staying out there at night because there's electricity. We need to tell the cops that we need to swing by there. I'm sure they're doing a great job, but we need to do more. What we're doing is not working right now, so we've got to do something different. But those are two very important parts of this community, and the youth are our future, and we've got to remember that. Oh, and when I was growing up, we had the YMCA, and we don't have any indoor basketball or indoor soccer or indoor facilities for these kids right now. We have a swimming pool in the summertime, but that's not enough. We've got to start looking toward more activities for our kids to get them off the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, I'll repeat the question.
Okay.
If elected, do you envision any special programs for two groups of your citizenry, senior citizens and youth?
Here's what we plan on doing for the senior citizens. Some of the other cities have tried it and it's been very successful. I think, and we've got a lot of volunteers in our city that likes to help. So what I envision is having a senior citizen winter sign up. And what we would do, they can sign up, or one of their relatives can sign up, and if it gets, let's say it gets real cold or snow, we would have volunteers to come in to give those senior citizens a call to see if they need any kind of assistance. Most of the senior citizens are pretty independent, but I think a courtesy call to them to see what we could do, I think that would be a very big deal, especially to the families that live away from here. Now, having taught school for 30 years, the kids are near and dear to my heart, and what I plan on doing is getting together with the school system and find out what they are already doing, and then what we can do. Now, here's the critical areas: on the weekends and during the summer. And you can't tell me if you have a child that goes to school that they're not busy from daylight to dark. You know, they get up at 7, they go to school at 8, they get home at 4 o'clock, they may or may not have homework, they play one of the sports teams, the band, the choir. You know, unfortunately, you cannot find a program for everyone. But you know, the schools do offer a lot of different programs for our youth. What I would like to do is get with the school system during the summertime and utilize the Civic Center and to utilize some of the other areas where we can not overlap and do the same thing, but we can do in partnership with them something a little bit different. And I think that's a big key to keeping our youth busy, and that's what we will plan on doing.
Thank you. Mr. Green, any rebuttal?
Yes, I would actually just like to add something. There is a local group that is working on a Boys and Girls Club, and they're working very hard on that, and I've actually met with them trying to work with them to see if we could find a location, and I think the city could get involved in that and look at expanding that for them. It's a very important thing. The Harlan City has a Boys and Girls Club that's very successful. It keeps a lot of their kids off the street, so that's another program we could look at adding to.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, we have many derelict residences in our city. The codes enforcement officer and board can condemn these properties, but it is very expensive to tear the buildings down. Is this issue a priority for you? If so, how would you budget for codes enforcement?
Currently, the city, if I looked at the budget last week, and we currently have $30,000 into the budget for demolition of buildings. And right now, the city is actually doing a lot of the work. They're tearing down about 10 houses. They're doing the work themselves using rental equipment, and it saves about half on if you get a contractor to come out and take care of the building. But here's the issue, and here's what we're going to have to do more of. Let's say that you have a house, even if it's a rundown house, or you have to tear it down. Ultimately, you have an obligation to the citizens of Middlesboro to try to get the owner or the heirs or somebody to pick up the tab for that, because it's their responsibility. Now, the city has a lot of options that they can do. First of all, they can go through the code enforcement process, which they get a ticket. We have a code enforcement board that they have to come in front of if they're here. But the city can actually put a lien on the property, and if they are not doing their obligation, keeping their grass cut, or they have a dilapidated building, guess what? They've not paid their taxes either. So when you put a lien on the building, at some point you can ask the court to have a public sale of that building. The city gets their money for doing what they did, and the local government gets their tax dollars for doing what they're doing. You know, you hate to have to do that, but we've got a lot of properties in Middlesboro that they don't know who owns them. They know who owned them last, but they've passed away, and they have no children, they have no relatives. So it's just sitting there, and it's, you know, it's getting worse each day because there's no upkeep on them. So the city has a lot of tools at their disposal, and I think it would be nice, you know, take care of the house, make sure the neighborhood's safe and it looks better, and then come back and try to recoup your money.
Thank you. Mr. Green, I'll repeat the question. We have many derelict residences in our city. The codes enforcement officer and board can condemn these properties, but it is very expensive to tear the buildings down. Is this issue a priority for you? If so, how would you budget for codes enforcement?
When I first ran for city council, this is one of my main goals 8 years ago. I ran on that as my city council, one of my agenda items that I wanted to get taken care of. We made some progress when I was first elected, and then we ran into some roadblocks. It is expensive. It gets to be out of control. We've worked hard as a city council. Recently, as Rick said, we adopted a city ordinance board. That's made some improvements. For a long time, the council was told that we didn't have the ordinances in place. That's not true. I've read the ordinance book. I know where they are. Recently, I had a police officer ask me in reference that we didn't have an ordinance. I said, we do. I went and found it and sent it to him. So as a city, we've let this problem grow for the last 25 to 30 years, and now it's out of hand. We've got to start with baby steps. We've got to work with the people that can't afford to do something, either clean their properties up or tear them down. I've mentioned before, I mentioned a lot, there are grant opportunities to improve your town, to clean it up. If you can get a Brownsfield grant, for instance, other things that asbestos, Middlesboro Main Street got a grant recently to get the asbestos and stuff out of the Elks home. We have to look at all options to clean this up. As far as budgeting, one of the cheaper ways is for the city employees to tear it down when they have time. I'd like to look at a program for prisoners to come out and be trained in a safe environment and have them tear some down. Somebody also mentioned that the fire department could also use some of these as fire training, and that might be a possibility as well. But yes, it is a top priority for me personally. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, any rebuttal? Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
what is your plan to deal with the homeless in Middlesboro?
First of all, I want to let each person know that Middlesboro cannot afford to get into the homeless shelter business. Now, if a church or a nonprofit wants to do that, they're more than welcome to. But I'm going to tell you, you better have a big pocketbook, because to start a homeless shelter, even if you get a building donated, is between $100,000 and $300,000. Now, the answer I'm going to give on this is not going to make anybody happy, because this is one issue that I've studied on and worried about for a long, long time. And I don't believe that there's a black and white answer for it. I've talked to a lot of folks walking around, and they said, well, it's a problem. I said, well, what are we going to do? I don't know, but we got to do something. You may have said that yourself. So here's what we're going to do. We need to find out some facts. We don't need to hear gossip that homeless are coming from California to get a sandwich. We need to find some facts so that we can make informed decisions. Now, Pineville has some facts. Pineville had a homeless shelter, and they have stats 2017. By the way, Pineville has quit taking men in their homeless shelter, and they've got 22 beds. They're only taking battered women and children. And if anybody in here's got $1 million, and you want to put something that will help our community, that would be what it would be. But Pineville found out that 90% of the people they served was from Bell County. They weren't from Ohio or Michigan or Canada or anywhere. They were local. And the majority of those people had to use the emergency shelter because they had a domestic dispute at home. So here's what I propose to do. This is something that none of you is going to like, and I'm willing to listen to any suggestions. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected before January the 1st, I'm going to appoint a committee of 2 councilmen and 4 citizens, and they will get to apply for this. They are going to find out 3 things. Number 1, an estimate of how many homeless we got. Number 2, where are these homeless come from and why are they here? The federal government, HUD's going to be doing a survey this month or next month too, called a PIT survey. And that's all that I know to do, because the council and the mayor is going to have to formulate policy on the homeless. But let me tell you this, whether you're homeless or not, you have a responsibility to do the right thing. Currently, we have businesses that have women at their door propositioning men. We've got men panhandling money, intimidating the customers, and I've talked to a business owner and it says it's cut her business down. You have them sleeping in front of the business. You have them urinating in the alleys. We will have a strong policy on vagrancy because we have to have it. The citizens, 99% of them, they deserve it. Thank you.
Mr. Green, what is your plan to deal with the homeless in Middlesboro?
It's just a second.
You need Dad's help?
There's seats in the front if anyone wants to come and sit down.
Stop before it gets to 0.
You okay?
Yeah, the homeless problem.
Yes.
This has been out campaigning and door to door. This has come up much more recently than it did in the primary. And so that begs the questions, what's going on? We have developed a growing problem. Well, people have said it's a problem, but what we have to do as a community is to try to figure out a way to help these homeless people. We need to find out why they're homeless. Middlesboro itself is not large enough to support the homeless population right now. What I would do is I would reach out to larger homeless shelters around our area, such as Knoxville, maybe there's some in Richmond or Lexington. And what I would do is I would develop a system where we could pick these people up and transport them to facilities where they can get the help they need. These community-wide feeding programs is a very good idea. We have to make sure that we are feeding the people of our community and not importing other people from outside the community. We have to develop a system to work with this feeding program and make sure that that is what happened. I'm all in favor of taking care of our own community, but when we start bringing people in from the outside, if that's happening, we have to figure out a way to deal with that. Another thing is that we have to have more enforcement. This is one of the reasons when a police officer was asking me, I sure wish we had a shopping cart ordinance. I could pull up and talk to these people and tell them they can't have these shopping carts, and I could at least talk to them and start correcting this problem. I said, we do have a shopping cart ordinance, and he said, really? I said, yeah, I'll go get it for you. I sent it to him the next day, and he told me that would help him very much when he sees somebody pushing a shopping cart down the road, that he can stop them and tell them that they're breaking the law. That's another thing. We have got to work with our police officers to inform them and educate them on all our current ordinances so they have the tools that they need to fight every problem in our whole city. Thank you.
Thank you. And you? Mr. Green, considering the many pressing needs of the city, including an aging sewer plant, the need for an adequate and well-signed transfer truck route, continued storm drainage, sewage drainage issues, would you consider raising the property taxes?
As far as raising the property taxes, I would not be able to say yes until we get all of the audits back and analyze that. I also couldn't answer that until if I'm elected mayor, to get in there, analyze the checkbook, analyzing everything about the revenues and expenses and seeing where we are balanced. We are challenged as a city. Our sewer plant is 30 years old and it does need some adjustments. City Council has a budget proposal from a local group to redesign the wastewater treatment plant. The mayor was told that we couldn't get a grant opportunity to get that because he didn't have the audits done. Council has been fighting for that as well. So when we get that up to date, hopefully we can get a grant or a low interest loan from a League of Cities to get that problem taken care of. The city does need to figure out a different revenue source. There's all kinds of different ways to do that, but as far as raising taxes, I can't say definitively yes until I get in and analyze from a business perspective where we are spending our money.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, would you consider supporting a raise in property taxes?
At this point, looking at the budgets that we've had opportunity to see, I don't think that that would be necessary. And I say that because after looking at the budgets, I believe we're taking in a sufficient amount of money. But you know, if you don't have any checks and balances over what you spend, it doesn't matter, what you have. I don't know, anybody remember George Allen, the great football coach? He was fired, and the owner said he'd give him an unlimited budget, and he exceeded it. So I think the city of Middlesboro is exceeding even what they have. Let me give you some things, some food for thought. If I told you that our general fund at the end of next year will have a rainy day balance of $3,000, would that raise your eyebrows any? $3,000 out of a general fund budget of about $7 million. That's all we got in the rainy day account if everything goes good. That'll run Middlesboro city government for 2 hours and 15 minutes. A school system with that budget would have to have $140,000 in a rainy day fund. If I told you that businesses in Middlesboro were sometimes waiting 3 or 4 months to get a paycheck from the city of Middlesboro because we didn't have the cash flow, would that cause your eyebrows to raise? Which happening. If I told you that at the end of this calendar year, the city of Middlesboro will have spent almost $900,000 on overtime, would that bother you? That's almost 10% of the budget, and you have to have some overtime, I know that. Is that a big deal? Well, it is to me. And we have been late with IRS payments because we don't have the money to pay the payroll and do the other. Have you heard the saying, you're gonna rob Peter to pay Paul? Well, I got news for Paul. He's in bad shape too if we don't get this budget lined out. Thank you.
Mr. Green, any rebuttal?
Yeah, I share the concerns. The city needs financial help. I'm not gonna lie about that. The city council, we learned a hard lesson. The budget has been followed. There's never been any more expenses spent out more than revenues. The budget has been followed because we make sure that is the case. We've cut the budget the last 3 or 4 years to try to combat that problem. But with that problem, and everybody's aware of it, my question to you is who do you want to be in charge going forward? I have the business background and education to make sure that I know what is spent. I've been running projects with a bigger budget than the city of Middlesboro right now, and I know how to meet a budget and make that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, how effective do you think receiving grants are to solving city problems? What priority would you give grant writing if elected?
I think there's 2 ways to get additional money. First of all, you can have a grant writer, and if you get a real good one, you're gonna pay a pretty big price for one. And they will bring some grants in. The other way to get them is through the political method, which that's the most prevalent. So, you can call and, for example, I know you can call the tourism and you say, hey, we need $10,000 for some tables up to Pine Mountain Park or wherever it is. So you have a political way of getting some extra money, and then you have the grant way of doing it. And again, I don't mind. In fact, you can even get a grant to hire a grant writer. And, that might be a good route to do that. But I don't mind hiring a part-time grant writer for a period of time to see if they can bring in enough money to justify having a salary. We're going to be on a tight budget. I think it's important to do that. But you also work with your elected officials to try to get state money in, and you don't necessarily have to write a grant for that money. So yes, it is important. Are we going to pay $50,000 or $60,000 for a grant writer? I don't think we have that in the budget right now. But trying to get a grant for the grant writer, doing one part-time to see how they do, I think is a very good idea.
Mr. Green, how effective do you think receiving grants are to solving city problems? What priority would you give grant writing if elected?
I think this is a very untapped market for Middlesboro. We are located in the Promise Zone and the SOAR Zone, which get added points for grant programs. I think we could work with the city council to reorganize a current city employee and add a grant writer position in with the current employee. You don't have to go out and hire a new employee. I would like to see us hire a full-time grant writer, but that doesn't mean they're only gonna be writing grants. They're gonna be doing other things across the city. The city can't afford it, and there's a the federal government gives out lots of money that would shock you all, so if Middlesboro can get that, we need to tap into that. But it's very important, and I think it would go a long way in helping our community. Thank you.
Any rebuttal?
No, ma'am.
No. Mr. Green, do you feel that it is important for department heads to be present at council and committee meetings? If so, would you make mandatory attendance requirements for department heads? This would include the fire chief, police chief, city attorney, codes officer, and street department.
I think it's very important for all the department heads to attend the meetings. For the last 5-6 years, my fellow council members can tell you that we have been requesting, demanding. We've tried to figure out a way to get the mayor to enforce our wishes from that. That's never been followed through. We get a couple of department heads at the meetings, but we've never been successful at that. What we would need to do as mayor is I would make them come and make oral reports to the city council and answer questions. Now, there might be a point where the city council asks questions they may not know the answer to. They can say, I need to do some research and I'll get back to you next month. But I would have the department heads at every meeting to inform the city council. As a current council member, I was very frustrated with the lack of information that we gathered. I've had employees tell me that they couldn't talk to me because they reported to the mayor. They'd be afraid I'd get too much information. I've been told that. That was very frustrating as a council member, and I found that hard to believe. But throughout the 8 years I've been on council, I've been so frustrated that in the end, I decided to run for mayor so I could change that. The council deserves to know, they deserve to know what's going on in our city, and the department heads need to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, do you feel that it is important for department heads to be present at council and committee meetings? If so, would you make mandatory attendance requirements for department heads?
The department heads will be at the council meeting. If they don't, we'll dock my day's pay. I mean, that's pretty simple. They need to be here. They serve at the discretion of the mayor, so they need to be here and they will be here.
Any rebuttal? No. Mr. Nelson, what do you believe to be the biggest obstacle you will face as mayor?
Well, I think we've done mentioned it. It's the budget. We have a lot of issues before us, but if you don't have money, you cannot move forward. You cannot buy that police car that you need. Our fire department, we need literally millions of dollars worth of improvements. We have things that we could fix right now, and short term, it would save us a lot of money long term. So I believe that the budget is number one, moving forward. Number two, on fixing up the dilapidated buildings that we have. We've got to redouble our effort on the houses that are subpar. And if you're a landlord, and we've got some real good landlords, but we've got some landlords that have been allowed to do anything they want for years, and you're just going to have to do what Ronald Reagan said. If they don't see the light, I don't know. It's aggravating when I think about it. And he said, if they can't see the light, you got to make them feel the heat. So I lost my point there, but I just get so frustrated walking and seeing these houses that 10 years earlier, there were people living in them. And they were good families, and now they're gone, and they're rental properties. And the landlords, not the good ones, they could care less except for that $300 they're getting. If they got sewer, it's fine. If they got a leaky roof, it's fine. They don't care as long as they get that money. Until we make everyone play by the same rules, then we're not going to improve. And hopefully, if you will have confidence in me to elect me mayor, we will take care of that, because that's a big issue. But number one now, that's the budget, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Green, what do you believe to be the biggest obstacle you will face as mayor?
Going door to door, and you get to talk to a lot of people, even people that you don't get the chance to. And the biggest thing I see, and the biggest challenge, will be bringing back hope to our community. Our community's lost its way. It's frustrated as much as I am. And this is one of the main reasons that I decided to run for mayor. I've been trying to make a difference since I moved home from college, got involved in the Bell County Chamber of Commerce, Then I went on to the Bell County Economic Development Foundation, got on city council, and I still haven't made the change that I want to make for our city. Since 2000, 3,000 people have moved out of Middlesboro. 1,200, the median family income has went down by $1,200 to $22,600. We've lost over 1,300 jobs in Bell County. Our poverty level has risen 4.5%. Over 30% of our families live in poverty. That's not gonna keep going. We've got to figure out how to do that. And what this city needs is a mayor who's gonna be involved in the community, as I have my whole life since I've been moved back here. Somebody's gonna get out and give it their best effort. Somebody that's grown up here, that cares and loves this community and wants to make the difference. But bringing back hope to our community so everybody can see the future is the #1 goal and challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Green, as the mayor, if you could sit down face to face with every citizen of Middlesboro, what would you ask us to do to work with you to improve our city?
If I could talk to every single citizen, I would ask that they become more active in their community. As a city councilman, I've never seen this many people here at a city council meeting. I love it that everybody is out here supporting this. This is very important to get out here and get informed. But we need every citizen in this town to get involved. We need everybody. It's gonna take a huge effort. We gotta clean up the town. We need to support downtown. We need to support the mall, get jobs. We need to get everybody out and get them active again and get them feeling like we all live in the same community, that we're all going in the same direction. But that's what I would ask them, is to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, as the mayor, if you could sit down face to face with every citizen of Middlesboro, what would you ask us to do to work with you to improve our city?
I think that the main thing that I have saw over the course of this campaign is folks that used to volunteer for things. They are frustrated with the city government, and they just say, I'm not gonna waste my time with that anymore. I mean, they're frustrated about the way things are going, and we lose a lot of valuable resources. Retired teachers, for example, to get in and mentor kids, or maybe, you know, when we talked about the senior citizens hotline in the wintertime, you know, getting some folks to come in there. I think the citizens, the vast majority of them, I think they want, whichever one of us get to be mayor, I think they want us to do well. Because if we do well, the city's gonna do well. But you've got to convince the people that are aggravated enough that they've quit helping. You've got to talk to them and say, hey, give us one more chance. Get out here and help us with this. We really need you. And I think if we do that, that we'll get a lot of them back, especially if they think that we've got their interests and the city interest in heart.
Thank you. Mr. Green? Mr. Nelson, if elected, do you plan to be a full-time mayor?
The answer, of course, is yes, and I'm retired, will be retired December 31st, so yeah, I'll be full-time and all the time for Middlesboro. That's one advantage I had as state representative. You know, I retired a little bit early from school teaching because I got so many calls. During the peak, maybe 6-7 years ago, I would receive 1,000 phone calls to my home. Now Facebook is taking over, and about half of them is private messages. You know, tell me about a ditch situation or a guardrail or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm going to be full-time, and I think it's important to do that because you need to have office hours, you need to get out and visit the businesses. And I think I've proven that a little bit too, because if you can say you visited 80% of the homes in Middlesboro, that shows that you're interested. You know, if you work hard to get the job, I think you'll work hard at the job. Thank you.
Mr. Green, if elected, do you plan to be a full-time mayor?
Yes, I plan to be a full-time mayor. Before I decided to run for mayor, I had very long discussions with my mom and dad about green construction and how that would affect us. And we all agreed that, my father even told me that he would continue to work because I wanted what was right for the city. He said he will do what's necessary to allow me to help this city. I will be a full-time mayor. I see the city as a business. That means the mayor would be the CEO. The important thing is to hire the right employees and to delegate when it's necessary, but not to delegate when it's not necessary. You have to follow through with your employees to make sure they're following that rule. In today's society, You can run businesses from anywhere. Cell phones, computers, I can log into my computer from anywhere and work wherever I'm sitting. I can log in from my iPad. There are ways to do it. I have ran construction projects with just as many employees on it as the city has right now. And you can do that remotely. You can do it when you're on there. You don't have to be on site every day. There are ways to do that. There's this rumor that I'm going to hire a city manager. I'm here to tell you that Middlesboro is not allowed to hire a city manager, and I will not hire a city manager. A city manager is a completely different form of city government. The Middlesboro is set up as a mayor, city council government. You cannot hire a city manager. The mayor's job is to hire the personnel that the city council adopt in the personnel ordinance, and that is what I'll do. I will hire the best people for the positions, and I have the experience to hire the right people. And yes, I will be a full-time mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Green, just like a football coach, we don't want you to give away your game plan, but what is one thing you plan to do on your first day in office?
Celebrate. No. My first day in office, I would attempt to set up a meeting. Me and Lucas actually talked about this. We had the same idea. You would have a meeting with the employees and to tell them that Middlesboro is changing. City government is changing. No longer will it just be like it has been. Inaction will not be tolerated. We've got some really good city employees that work hard, but we need to understand that we're going to move forward. And I would have a meeting with all the employees, starting with City Hall, and it would be hard to meet with all of them the same day. But then you'd have to go to the police station, the fire department, and so on, and let them know that there is a new chief in town. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, just like a football coach, we don't want you to give away your game plan, but what is one thing you plan to do on your first day in office?
Actually, my first day is going to begin November the 7th because we're not going to take too much of a break to get ready. I think it's critical for the new council that comes in, and I want you to remember something. Only 4 of the existing council have decided to run for re-election. So the most we could have of existing council members is 4. So what I plan on doing is calling a series of meetings before January the 1st. Our first meeting with the council, by the way, it does not violate any sunshine laws because you do not have 5 existing and already elected council people. But we're going to have a meeting the week after the election. And we're going to sit down in the mayor's office and we're going to talk about what our goals are, what our agreements are, and what our disagreements are. Our second meeting, we're going to ask the city clerk to come down and go over the budget line by line. If you got any questions, we may even have a third meeting on the budget because remember, it's the most important. And then before January the 1st, we're going to have people from the police department, the fire department, codes enforcement. That would be an interesting one in one sense. The dilapidated buildings is number 2. We'll have them come in. Somebody from the sewer department, somebody from the street department, explain their roles to the council. Also, the Kentucky League of Cities has a workshop for newly elected council members and mayors. You see, we're not going to wait to January the 1st to do something. We're going to start on November the 7th preparing our council because we could have 9 brand new councilmen. And I'm sure, just like I would be, you know, you do a new job and you're going to feel a little bit scared. But it's going to be my job as mayor to have as many meetings as we can, 4, 5, 6 meetings, so that when January the 1st comes, you're going to feel more comfortable. And if you're more comfortable and not intimidated, then I think you're going to hit the job running. And by the way, the most important job on January the 1st is for the new mayor to make sure we've got plenty of salt, we've got the snow plows ready, our trucks run, because that's going to be the first crisis you have for the new mayor is making sure you can plow the streets. Thank you.
Mr. Green, do you have anything to add? No. Is there audience questions? It's just the one I have. Okay. So this will go to Mr. Nelson. This is a question from the audience.
Okay.
Generally speaking, both candidates are running on similar platforms: economic development, transparent government, and cleaning up the buildings in town. Why is it that you want to take such actions as mentioned above?
I've lived in Middlesboro 42 years, and I said in my opening statement that I believe we went back just a little bit. We're not holding wrong, we're going back. And since I have lived here that long and will probably pass away here 30 years from now, I've got a vested interest in the city and I want it to do well. So I believe, and I think the experience in state level government, you know, you talk about a $10 million budget, we've got a $4 billion budget in the state. So I think our experience that we've had, it gives us a leg up. I know Bo will disagree with that, but you know, when you're handling $1 billion budgets and you've got 100 different entities that want them, I think that's a pretty good lick to put on your resume.
Mr. Green, generally speaking, both candidates are running on similar platforms: economic development, transparent government, and cleaning up the buildings in town. Why is it that you want to take such actions as mentioned above?
The reasons I decided to run for mayor, I've grown up here, lived here my whole life, moved back here from college, been a businessman here for 17 years now, it's hard to believe. And I've seen this town change, and it's not changed for the better. I've seen politics being played in town. And the reason I decided to run is I am not a politician. I'm not here, I'm not groomed for public speaking, but that's not why I ran. I ran because I care. I care about the people in this room. I care about the people I grew up with. I care about my friends that had to move away because they did not have an opportunity here. I care about my future kids. I care about my nieces and nephews. I care about the kids in this community. And that is the reason I decided to run for mayor. Like I said, I've been involved in many organizations and I have not been able to make the impact that I want to make. And I've been so frustrated at city council, as that my fellow council members can tell you, and that's why you're seeing so many not run again, because in the current situation, the council doesn't have a staff to do their legwork. The council depends on city employees. Those city employees report to the mayor. So when the mayor doesn't want something done, it's very difficult to have the sources to get something done from the council position. That's why you're seeing them not run again. We're all frustrated. 2 of us decided to run for mayor. We ran as friends. I appreciate that. And that is why I decided to run for mayor, because I want to improve our community. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, anything to add?
No.
Okay, I have one more audience question, and it will go to Mr. Green first. Do either of you intend to use a deputy mayor to do the job you are elected to do?
I do not intend to use a deputy mayor. That position is not even in part of our personnel policy. The council adopts that as well. I've read it. That position does not exist. So there is no way you can hire a deputy mayor, and I do not plan on doing that. I will be in charge of the city if elected. I will be the CEO, like I've said. I'd like to run it like a business. The employees will report to me, and I will make the decisions, and I will be there full time. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, do either of you intend to use a deputy mayor to do the job you are elected to do?
No.
All right. We will now hear the closing statements of the candidates, and Mr. Green will go first.
Again, I want to thank everyone out here for coming. I see a lot of concerned faces, as I'm concerned as well. Middlesboro is an important city. It used to be the biggest city, I was told by my father. He's told me lots of stories, between Knoxville and Lexington. We used to be the focal point of southeastern Kentucky. We've lost that somehow. We've lost that to Corbin, Morristown. When I was little, they were the same size, about the same. Somehow we've been passed up. Pineville's being more active as us. The city of Middlesboro deserves better than that. That's why I decided to run for mayor. I've got a lot of support in this community. I want to thank everybody that has helped me as part of my campaign. I've had a lot of people out helping me. I want to thank my family. My sisters have all helped me. My brother-in-law, my future brother-in-law, my nieces and nephews, my parents. And I also want to thank my wife. She might be a little crazy. We got married a month ago, moved, finished some projects for green construction, and she agreed to campaign instead of going on a honeymoon. I can't say thank you enough, but that's how much she cares about this community as well. I'd like to say, since I've been involved, our city's going backwards. With all due respect, my opponent's been in a position, state rep, to help this community, and the facts do not support that we're going in the right direction. So as your mayor, I will give it my best effort to turn that around, and I appreciate your vote on November the 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, please begin your statement.
Yes, I want to respond to what Mr. Green said. You know, I think he took a swipe at me for bringing in $13.5 million to the city. And part of it's going to him on his construction company for doing the thing. And what I want to bring to you, and I wasn't going to say anything, but since he opened the door, you know, you can complain about all these problems, but when you've had 8 years to make an impact and have not done anything, I don't think you should be taking a swipe at anybody for bringing $13 million to the city. Now, let me make my closing statement. I want to ask for each and every one of you's vote. I have the experience, the know-how, and I have the desire, and I'm not afraid to make tough decisions. And the budget is the most important decision that we're going to have to make, and I can do the job. I have proven, I think, campaigning that by going to 80% of Middlesboro that we're interested and that we're willing to work. So I want to ask you to vote for me. Again, campaign's about over, and I appreciate each and every one of you that supported me, and I'd like to ask for your vote on November the 6th, and we thank you very much.
We respect that each of the candidates were willing to stand before the public and state their position on the issues that concern citizens. I would like to thank the league members of the Business and Professional Women's Club, the City of Middlesboro staff, in particular James Barnett, for facilitating the forum. Thank you, Anthony Cloud, for covering for LMU. And I especially want to thank Brian O'Brien for all the time and energy he expends in keeping people informed of what is happening in Bell County. He spends countless hours on behalf of residents, and for this he deserves a round of applause. We hope that the information that you have gained tonight will aid you in making your choice when you vote on Tuesday, November 6th. Please vote and make democracy work. Join us for refreshments and the opportunity to speak to the candidates. Good night.